Welcome. Today we're diving into modernizing stored procedures in Azure with Apache Spark. Azure consultants will frequently encounter stored procedures. They are common in many different project types. In my experience, I see consultants tasked with reusing stored procedures directly within the different Azure tools or completely reimagining them with Spark. This is because stored procedures are great for low data volumes and reusability within Azure, but they falter with big data efficiency and are tightly coupled with expensive database management tools. Spark provides on-demand solutions to the limitations of stored procedures. It excels in big data processing, cleansing, and complex analytics, succeeding where stored procedures fall behind. On the screen now are a few examples of SQL keywords that Spark SQL offers direct replication of. Spark is unable to do some common stored procedure commands easily, like conduct CRUD operations directly on live database tables, which forces awkward workarounds. On top of this, Spark does not natively support ACID transactions or important data quality features like schema enforcement, and Spark lacks direct support for some valuable SQL commands seen on the screen now. But this is not to say Spark can't recreate the functionality in another way, so the point is, while upgrading stored procedures to Spark, if you notice these elements, it may require additional thought and time. To best explain gaps between Spark and stored procedures, look into SQL being declarative and Spark being imperative. Directly translating SQL code into working Spark is direct sometimes, but the simplest approach constrains Spark and will limit its efficiency. Initial performance might improve, but true optimization requires a fundamental rethink of how procedures are executed. Delta Lake adds missing database-specific features to Spark such as ACID transactions and schema enforcement, bringing Spark closer to the functionality of traditional stored procedures. It implements seamlessly on top of Spark and should always be considered during translations. Consultants will implement Spark in Azure where notebooks exist. Then there are about 5 different language options for implementation, but I primarily see PySpark or Spark SQL notebooks. Each language has near exact functionality, but each Azure resource has capabilities different from the next, such as Databricks supporting Spark SQL variables, but Synapse does not. Please pause here for 6 Azure consulting tips about preparing for stored procedure modernization. This slide applies those tips to a workflow example. I find that locating nested stored procedure calls and table references are the most frequent indicators of a potentially under-scope translation. And finally, the screenshots here demonstrate how simple stored procedures translate almost directly to Spark SQL. More complex procedures will force more usage of the less familiar but more efficient PySpark approach. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you